How's it going? Welcome back to the Coffee and Scotch Esports Show. I'm your host, Bowman Shota, and today we're going to talk about the grind of making money in esports. Now, we've all seen the headlines. Esports is going to be a billion-dollar business over the next year. It's going to be a couple billion dollars in the next 5 years. You have TV stations like, TBS and ESPN and Sky One and BBC all investing into content in esports. And that's very exciting. Don't get me wrong. Super exciting, super happy that money, that type of thing is coming into the scene. But when we're talking about actually making money in esports on an individual level, it gets a little dicey still. And that's why the title of this video is called The Grind, is because even at your top level, it is still a grind to make money. Let's talk about the most obvious one is a pro player. Okay, so someone at the top of their league. We're talking either League of Legends, Dota, Counter-Strike, and Heroes of the Storm, possibly. But we'll see about that one. But at the same time, you have those top 3 games, and the top players in those games make a decent living, and some of them are technically millionaires at this point. I mean, you look at the players of Evil Geniuses for Dota 2 and last year, who they won the international, and they become instant millionaires with that $6.6 million prize pool for per team that won. That's exciting, but at the same time, you don't even have Evil Geniuses as a direct invite to this year's internationals. So the number 1 team in the world last year is now going to have to grind it out and fight for their spot to potentially make even a similar salary as last year. And let's bring it back and be a little more realistic, because obviously Dota 2 with the crowdfunded international and the money and that stuff is kind of insane in a good way as far as how much money you can make. But your average, say in North America, top tier pro player for the top esports makes a salary, and this is before any prize winnings, of about $50,000. And then with prize monies, they'll maybe boost that between an additional, $10,000 to $80,000, depending on their success. And that's over the course of a year. I obviously, if you have a dominant team that's winning everything, that's great, and they'll make a lot more money because of that. But the nice thing about esports is that it's such a competitive scene at the top tier that you don't always have the same team winning all the big competitions, winning all the prize pools, and so it does average out to where your average esports player probably doesn't break 6 figures on a yearly income. Now, I'm not knocking that type of money, because for someone who hasn't gone to college, who plays video games essentially, making 6 figures is pretty damn good. But if we compare, because we talked about it in our esports physicality video, a few months ago, the physical tolls on an esports player's body and on their mind, but more on the body side, means they're retiring in their mid-20s more than likely still. And if you compare that to your traditional sports athletes, even someone who's not a starter makes more money than that. They'll make a couple $100,000 a year, and they'll ride the bench 3/4 of a game. And they get to play for over a decade before they really get to be kicked off their team, if they're consistently good. And so it's one of those things where, if we compare how much time and how much energy and that grind of what the top tier pro players are putting in, they're still working their butts off for comparatively not that a lot of money. And then we drop down right below the top tier. Let's use League of Legends as an example. What about these Challenger Series individuals? It's all well and good. I saw a recent, in the whole TSM Dream Team controversy that's going on right now, the letter intent said someone was going to be paid $2,000 a month, which sounds great when you're an 18-year-old and you have, all you're doing is you're playing video games. $2,000 a month. But for someone who's thinking about, that's going to have to retire at age 24, 25 and find other work and find something else to do, that's honestly not a lot of money, especially depending on where you live. Which a lot of these things take place, in your bigger cities like your LA area and stuff like that. $2,000 a month does not go very far. And so they have to grind through streaming, through sponsors, through ad revenue, and all merchandising if they can take it that far to get that grind. And a good example is look at someone like Mo recently. Mo's in the headlines. He's from Counter-Strike. He is an analyst and retired Counter-Strike player. He, has essentially, to a point, made it. He's on TV. He's on E-League as an analyst. But we'll see if he will be going forward, because now he has a controversy with one of his streaming sponsors, who happens to be a CSGO betting site. Not saying there's anything right or wrong about that, but at the same time, that controversy, however way the chips fall in that, could essentially end his career. But the point I want to bring from that story is that even though he's made it on TV, he's a known face, he still has to grind it out. He still has to stream, 5 days a week. He still has to work to maintain and get sponsors in order to maintain that livable wage, that income, to make this his regular full-time job. And he's also another one where it's like, I applaud him for going after being an analyst, being a caster, to have a career in esports other than being a pro gamer, because that's basically your only other options. Is if you're not the top tier player making those $100,000 prize purses, or $1 million prize purses, or multi-million-dollar prize purses, you have your options are basically being an analyst, being a coach, being a journalist, maybe a graphic designer, or working for one of the big tournaments like your ESL, like your E-League, like your your Faceit and all that stuff. So it's one of those things where even though there's lots of money in the esports scene now, we have investors like Shaquille O'Neal and Rick Fox getting in, big names getting into esports. It's still a grind. It's still very difficult to make money in esports. But if you can find your niche and you can find your audience, there is money to be had. So to sum up this video, a little bit of shorter video, I want people who are getting into esports to have perspective and to have realistic goals, to know that it's going to be a grind. Will there be fruit at the end? Will there be money at the end? Honestly, there probably will be. If you put in the time and the effort and you have the quality of whatever you're doing, whether you want to be a pro player, whether you want to be a commentator, whether you want to be a journalist, put in the time and the effort and you will get noticed, because there are lots of opportunities in esports. I know of personally lots of job positions that are open, some paid, some not paid, but they're opportunities for people to get into esports, and showcase their skill and talent in whatever form it is, and actually make money doing it. And as esports grow, that making money will turn into a livable wage, will turn into a livable salary. And that's all, that's the passion and the goal. That's the Sir Scoots of what we all want to do, is basically, funding little LAN tournaments, 15 years ago, to now owning a league, and reaping in the rewards of all your hard work. But as you get into it, it's going to be a grind, but trust me, it's worth it, because esports is so much fun and so entertaining and so great to be a part of the scene. So have fun, like, share, and favorite, and subscribe as you see fit. Check out more great content on esports.online, and tune in every week for another great episode of the Coffee and Scotch Esports Show. Have fun.